Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another video, and it is day one without football. The Premier League being suspended yesterday until April, and now no football for a long time, it feels like. And what are we going to do? But I still want to make content for this channel, and we're going to do what we always do, is talk about the most important thing, which is Chelsea. But before we get into the video, just want to ask you guys to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Had a really good week of content, going to continue that rolling with some interesting topics, and hopefully keep you entertained whilst you're self-quarantined. So let's get into it. And what is Chelsea's best centre-back pairing? It's a question I think a lot of us have had this year, and this sort of video was inspired by an article by Simon Johnson in The Athletic. But what this article really does quite well is it sort of hones in on each centre-back pairing, looks at the stats, look at how each combination has worked in games, what is successful, the plus, the minuses to all of these, and we're going to go through them one by one, and then I'm going to give you my opinions along the way as well, and then hopefully we'll come up with what we feel is the best Chelsea centre-back pairing in the current squad. So starting off with Kurt Zouma and Fikayo Tomori, this is probably the best partnership we've had this season. It's the one that's been played the most together. So let's look at the stats. They've played 11, won 7, drawn 2 and lost 2 in all competitions. This was the centre-back pairing during our best period of the season, that winning run in the Premier League, where we really got some of our best results. Tomori and Zouma were together for the game against Ajax away, Chelsea's 1-0 victory there, which is one of Chelsea's best performances of the season by far. But they were also the defensive partnership when we had the return game, that crazy game, that 4-4 against Ajax in November. But this is the most consistent form of the season for Chelsea when those two were playing in defence, from September the 25th to November the 9th, where we won 9, drew 1 and lost 1. They started together in 8 of those fixtures. And, the great thing about this is, you've got Zouma's physical presence. We know that, his tackling ability. And also Tomori, how much he grew in that period of time. Even when he had lapses in concentration, you really felt like Kurt Zouma was sort of helping out and aiding Tomori in his learning, and both of them worked really well. And to be honest, every time I've seen them since, even though of course they haven't played as much now because of course Tomori has gone out the team, even in FA Cup games against Hull, I feel like those two have a really good chemistry and understanding between each other. The reason they played so much, of course, was because both Andreas Christensen and Antonio Rudiger were both injured during that period. So Lampard didn't have a lot of options in centre-back to play with. So that's why those two played a lot. But they definitely played a lot of football and they played well together. But they haven't played as much since after Christmas, with Tomori not featuring a lot in the Premier League. Probably the downside to this is lapses in concentration, especially from Fikayo Tomori, that we have seen as he's grown into the team at Chelsea. And also possession-wise, this isn't as good as some of the other defenders we have on the ball. Tomori is calm in possession, but he isn't as good in terms of stats as Christensen or Rudiger, especially Zouma as well. Zouma isn't as good on the ball as some of the other defenders. So those are some of the downsides of playing this centre-back pairing. And with Tomori still learning, he does have those downsides, and even sometimes Zouma can be a little bit rash in a challenge too. Moving on to the next centre-back pairing, Kurt Zouma and Andreas Christensen. These two have played 7, won 2, drawn 3 and lost 2. Christensen has sort of been a player for a lot of his Chelsea career, still is a young player, 23 years old. Come in and out of form. He comes in the team, goes out of the team. He's had to deal with that a lot. He hasn't been a regular starter for Frank Lampard, Maurizio Sarri or Antonio Conte when he eventually broke through from the youth system. And Christensen's probably best element is his passing accuracy, and a bit like with some other combinations that Frank can choose from, Zouma, of course, that physical nature to him, that tackling, that aggressiveness in an aerial duel, but Andreas Christensen, there is that downside to him. He can read the game really well. He is much more of course, he isn't as sort of aggressive as some of the other centre-backs. He isn't as loud and vocal, which can be a massive downside in the defence. He isn't one of those players with sort of leadership qualities to him, which you want from a defence, especially one defender of a centre-back pairing. And I think as well, what you need to realise is this was the centre-back pairing at the start of the season. They were the centre-back pairing during that 4-0 defeat to Manchester United, where they conceded a lot of goals. These two haven't kept a clean sheet within a game, which is a downside. And they were that centre-back pairing during Everton's 3-1 victory over Chelsea in December, where they really got bossed by Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And that is the difficulty when looking at this pairing for Frank Lampard, is they can get bossed maybe physically by some more aggressive strikers. So that is something why we probably haven't seen this as much recently. So those are the downsides to this combination. The next one is the current back two. The back two we have seen in the last 2 games for Chelsea, and that is Kurt Zouma and Antonio Rudiger. They've played 6, won 3, drawn 1, and lost 2. Tackling and physicality, I think, are the best thing about these two in a centre-back pairing. And as we've seen in the last 2 games, they do have lapses in concentration, but they can be really assertive in defence, which is what Chelsea need, especially in defence this season. We haven't been that, and there's been, lack of communication, lack of confidence, maybe lack of chemistry. Also, it's noteworthy to point out that both Rudiger and Zouma have the best tackling percentage of any of the club centre-backs this season. Rudiger with 62.5% and Zouma with 57.1%. But other than that, these two can be exploited on one-on-ones. I think we saw that demonstrated against Everton, even though, of course, it was another clean sheet for Chelsea. That one crucial moment in the game where Dominic Calvert-Lewin went one-on-one with Kepa and put his shot wide. That was a case of Kurt Zouma being sloppy in possession, and then it was one-on-one with Rudiger. And Calvert-Lewin should have scored there, and Chelsea should have got punished, but they didn't. They were lucky for once in that area. But I think the fact is there is that experience within this centre-back pairing that helps. Zouma and Rudiger have played a lot of games, a lot of Premier League games, more than Tomori, and probably there is that maybe sense that Christensen can sometimes lack that confidence and consistency. But as we've seen in recent games, both of these defenders can have poor days at the office. But I do believe this is a centre-back pairing Frank Lampard, when we eventually get back to playing games, will stick with, because it has kept him clean sheets. But there is concerns and question marks over both of these players' form when they play together in a centre-back pairing. And the last centre-back pairing is Andreas Christensen and Fikayo Tomori. This is the one that's played the least this season in a back two. Played 4, won 2, drawn 1, and lost 1. They played well, I think, against Brighton earlier in the year. That was cited in the article. That was a really good game defensively by Chelsea, especially earlier on in the season where we hadn't had a clean sheet yet. But as well, I think what this article points out really well, and I do completely agree with it, is there are not a lot of loud talkers, especially in this centre-back combination. I think looking at both of these defenders, I think there is real positives between both of them. I think Christensen and Tomori can both be really good defenders for Chelsea, but they are still players you can't really trust, and I don't think either of them dominate their area enough or are vocal enough in a defence. That's something we've already spoken about in this video, and I think these two very much demonstrate that. Christensen has been playing well recently, but I feel you need a more physical presence next to him, and Tomori is still learning the game. And they did play together in the game away at Bournemouth. That was in a back 3, not a back 2, but we saw how chaotic that second half and even the first half was. Both of those players really struggled that day with the movement of Bournemouth, and that is probably a concern to Frank Lampard, and why recently these two haven't been playing as consistently, especially together. And when you look at aerial duels, something which Christensen struggles with, well, Tomori struggles with it as well. The most, 54.8% lost in the team. That's 28 out of 62 he has lost. And with all those back twos, there are negatives to them. There's none that really convince you this is the best one this season. If we're just looking based on evidence and stats rather than people's subjective opinions about it. It's interesting to me, and I've said this before in videos, Antonio Rudiger and Fikayo Tomori in a back two is the only partnership Lampard hasn't tried this season. The two have played together in a back 3 successfully. I remember Spurs away was a game where they played together and played pretty well and kept a clean sheet, but they haven't played together in a back 4. And that is a combination, I think, earlier in the season when Tomori suddenly came into favour, I think a lot of fans were hoping to see, but we haven't, in truth, we just haven't seen it at all in a back 2. So that is something I'd like to see and make a judgment on before we know what is the best one. It's interesting, if I just look through all the defenders, I was saying this a lot, that when he was injured, Antonio Rudiger was Chelsea's best defender. I truly did believe that. And if you look based on his form recently, especially if as a whole rather than just the last couple of games, I've been proven wrong. You know, I think he has really underperformed. I think in a lot of cases that injury feels like it has, you know, halted his progress a bit. But I did believe, based off the previous 2 seasons he's had at Chelsea, I did believe he was our best defender in a back three or a back two. I thought he really was dominant in that area. And I thought the consistency of his performance was really impressive. The vocal side to his game, potentially being a leader and a captain for Chelsea in the future. But this season, he's sort of gone back on that. You've got Fikayo Tomori, who is a player that excites so many people and he's impressed so many people as he's grown into the team. And there's been a bit of a shock in his second half of the season why he hasn't played as much for Frank Lampard when he was so in favour for Lampard earlier in the season. He's been so impressive when he's played. And I think that has been a bit of a shock to people, especially because our defence hasn't been tight this season. It has been loose. It has been open. And I think all those things make people believe that maybe bringing Tomori back could help. But it isn't going to help him recently with the way the defence have been performing quite well, actually. So I think he's going to struggle to get back in the team instantly. You've got Kurt Zouma, who came back from Everton, who's been playing, I think, really well. I think he is probably an unsung hero this season. I think he probably goes under the radar. And I think he's put in some really good performances. But as we spoke about in this video, does have those erratic and negative sides to his game and probably does need a really strong defensive partner to help him out and to maybe plug some of those gaps in his game. And got Andreas Christensen, that very much feels like a player that can become a dominant centre-back at Chelsea, but we just haven't seen it. He hasn't been a consistent player. There's been talks maybe of a move away, but Chelsea want to keep him. I think personally for me, there's a variety of factors. I think that I like the current centre-back pairing that Frank has, and while it's working, you've got to keep using it. But I do believe Fikayo Tomori will be a player that does come into this back two eventually. We could see Tomori and Christensen be the future of Chelsea's back two. And yes, when we're talking about centre-backs, it's a really easy comparison to make, but Virgil van Dijk had such a transformative effect on that Liverpool defence, and could Koulibaly do the same for Chelsea and be the real key answer here to improving Chelsea's problems? But I think the conundrum for Lampard is he doesn't have any terrible defenders. These are all defenders at Chelsea currently who can have brilliant days and performances, and I think that's a struggle for Lampard and for fans when debating this is, could a Van Dijk level defender be at Chelsea already, or a transformative defender that can dominate that area? I look at a player like Tomori in a couple of years. Could Christensen be that player? Would persisting with Rudiger and Zouma as a centre-back pairing really help Chelsea? We're not sure. And also, it's not only about the back four, it's also about the fullbacks, the keeper, the midfield. All of that being assured could help Chelsea and really make us more certain and less uncertain under Frank Lampard. Those are my opinions on Chelsea's best centre-back pairing. I'm really intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell to never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.